group of residents in the Wethersfield area who continue to oppose plans for 2 new prisons have received support from a major national charity. Lots to talk about on the programme today, and this is just one of these local issues that we like to have a look at. The campaign to protect Royal England has backed local campaigners for the site to return to its agricultural purposes, of which it served before the Second World War. A consultation by the Ministry of Justice, who are leading the proposals, ended in November last year, where many responses objected to the plans. Now, plans are still to be formally submitted to Braintree District Council, but if approved, the prisons could be built as early as next year. They could be built by as early as next year. Alan Mackenzie is the chairman of SWAP, which stands for Stop Wethersfield Airfield Prisons, and joins us now. Very good afternoon to you, Alan.
Good afternoon, Sadie. Thanks for inviting me on.
No, nice to have you on. So for people that haven't been following this project, can you just remind us what the plans are and why you're against them?
Yeah, certainly. Well, the Ministry of Justice came up with a scheme after talking to the Ministry of Defence, who own the Wethersfield Airfield site, to plonk 2 mega prisons, which the term is aptly described because you're talking about each prison holding 1,715 prisoners, so a total of 3,430 prisoners in 2 different blocks. This proposal is for the corner of the airfield site, and you're talking about something which will end up being, or could end up being, 1 mile long, 4 stories high, 3 miles around the perimeter, sitting on a 300-foot high plateau in the middle of the beautiful Essex countryside, floodlit, so it's going to shine out like a bleacher beacon for miles around. You can see the site, one of the water towers on the site, if you go on some of the local roads, miles and miles away. So it would be an absolute blot on the landscape. The sheer size and scale of it is just so inappropriate for a site which is so isolated. The road network around there, as anybody knows, is all B roads or unclassified roads, and totally unsustainable.
Wow, to be up so high, that seems quite strange. Normally they like to sink things down and put all trees around them so you can't see things.
True. However, think of where an airfield would be ideally sited. Up a little bit higher, where there's a little bit of wind, helps you to take off. So when it's been originally built for World War II and then was developed by the Americans for the Cold War, it was an ideal site for an airfield. It's just not an ideal site for a huge development. And the SWAP campaign is not about being anti-prisons. It's just about being anti such a ridiculously large development in the middle of the countryside and just being totally unsustainable.
Must mean a lot to you then to have a group like the support of the campaign to protect rural England behind you.
It is fantastic that they've come out with the position statement that they've had. It emphasises everything that the SWAP campaign is trying to get across to people, and there are an awful lot of people in Essex that still don't realise the impact that this will have in the rural environment around them. And the CPRE have said the scale of the prison proposals are alarming and hugely unwelcome. It's got a brutal design, height and mass, and it's not well served by transport links. And there's a widespread concern over the impact of the proposals on local biodiversity. It couldn't be more damning.
Do you think the planners will take notice of this, though?
Well, to be honest, we believe that Braintree District Council in general has had an underlying feeling of support for these proposals. Do you remember they did throw out a proposal for 5,000 homes nearly on the airfield several years ago? But this prison proposal has been bubbling along in the background for a few years now, with the help and assistance of Braintree District Council. And it's only really come to light in the last few months, and it's only allowed us these last few months to really get this campaign going. and to alert local residents and the wider residents in Essex of just what a folly it is. We sincerely hope that the planners at Braintree District Council, given that it goes against national planning policies, local planning policies, and even the Ministry of Justice's own policies on the siting of prisons, which should be near to urban conurbations so that prisoners can be visited by their families and loved ones easily, and they can find outplacement jobs easily. Well, we're miles away from jobs anywhere, and for anybody to get to visit prisoners on a site like that is ridiculous. The transport links, as anybody knows around here, are terrible, and everybody would have to drive.
Alan, can I stop you there for a moment? We need to do our travel. Then I'd like to come back to you, if you will stay with us. Alan Mackenzie, chairman of SWAP, which stands for Stop Wethersfield Airfield Prisons, on BBC Essex. If you'd like to comment as well, you're very welcome. 0800 111 40 41. Do you live in the area, or do you know the area? Do give us a call. Let us know. Right now, though, 15:15. Let's find out what's happening on the roads where you are. Barry Lewis has the latest. BBC Essex. So straight back to our conversation about residents in the Wethersfield area are opposing a plan for a new prison. The Campaign to Protect Rural England has backed them as well, and says that this site should return to its agricultural purposes. So we're talking about that now. Tell us as well, if you would, Alan, I mean, is there anywhere else where you could think to site it? Have you suggested anywhere else that this prison could go? If it's got to be built, where should it go?
Yeah, it's not really our position to propose where prisons should be built. There are other places within Essex who made offers to the Ministry of Justice when there was a call for prison sites, and they were surprised that the Ministry of Justice didn't go back to them.
Wow.
Our position is simply that just because the Ministry of Defence is looking to vacate an old World War II base, just because it's there, just because it's available, thinking that plonking a huge development onto it is a good idea is what we're campaigning against. And it's not just the residents of Swap. I think maybe uniquely in the country, there are 10 parish councils who have come together under the Wethersfield Air Base Scrutiny Committee, which sits under Wethersfield Parish Council. But you have Finchingfield, Wethersfield, Great Bardfield, Panfield, Shalford, Gosfield, Great Yeldham, the Salings, Toppersfield, Little Bardfield, all on the same committee, which are opposing this grotesque development, quite frankly. So it's not just residents, it's the parish councils all the way around, and they're more expecting to join as well.
Crikey. Now, obviously, you want this project not to happen, but I think the thing is, if they own the land, that's what you're saying then, isn't it? If the Ministry of Defence own the land, they've got the land anyway, so I suppose they don't have to start buying it. But if it did go forward, are you willing to compromise with the Ministry's plans at all if they incorporated green policies or maybe adapt their proposals? Is there anything they could do that would make it acceptable?
We are going to be in touch with the Ministry of Defence. I think the Ministry of Defence has realised that they've been ignoring residents' concerns for such a long time and been discussing this with the council for several years. To not have engaged residents, community groups, parish councils is really disgraceful, and they've started to realise that. It is impossible to believe that something of that size, with the traffic network, which is based on medieval grounds, basically, around where the prison is. It's one of the most isolated sites in the country when you start to look at, well, how far away it is from the strategic road network. Most prisons are right next to an A road somewhere. We're 8-9 miles away at the very best, and that's through B roads and unclassified roads. So I think the MOD is beginning to realise that maybe this isn't such a good idea and maybe it doesn't have the legs after all. And we're happy to talk to them about what could be done alternatively there. I mean, other sites have had some solar farms on there. A country park, quite frankly, would be great for the locality, because there's really very little here to attract tourists, and yet it's one of the most beautiful parts of the Essex countryside. I mean, it's equivalent to Constable Country and Dedham Vale. You've got the Bardfield artists who are becoming more and more famous, who painted in the area. And, you know, you're not going to attract tourists if you plonk such a huge monstrosity in the middle of that countryside. Whereas if you have a country park with some maybe light industrial uses, there are some businesses on the periphery of the airfield already who use some of the buildings. There's nothing wrong with that. There is some housing there already, because the Ministry of Defence have some military families up there, so there's nothing wrong with a little bit of housing. And there's a technical site which has some barracks and some other buildings, which again could be used for light industrial use. We are very happy to work with the MOD to produce something which is sustainable and makes sense for the locality. And bear in mind, there are some great heritage assets up there, which everybody recognises. Historic England recognises as well. This is one of the most well-preserved Cold War airfields, in fact, airfields full stop, in the country. And, you know, using that as a discovery centre. There's a museum up there, which sadly the MOD has just recently closed.
So you do have lots of ideas, Alan, so you could come up with a lot of things other than a big looming prison over you. Alan, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Alan Mackenzie, Chairman of SWAP, which stands for Stop Wethersfield Airfield Prisons. Thank you very much indeed. Now, we approach the Ministry of Justice for a statement on the latest developments in the plans and the comments made by the rural focused charity. A prison service spokesperson said, "We are committed to working with the local community on these plans, which would bring considerable benefits, creating hundreds of jobs while boosting demand for local businesses. A consultation taken in views of local residents has now closed, and we will set out any plans in due course." And I promise you we will be keeping an eye on that.